And yeah, I'm wittering now, so to stop me wittering, we shall move on to the Soviet, or I can't say Soviet, sorry, it's not Soviet, but communist era Czechoslovakia with Tomorrow I'll Wake Up and Scald Myself with Tea.
Yes, so you wimped out of trying to say Zitra vstanu a oparym sekadzim. Maybe.
I'm quite willing to give most things
I'll give it a go, but I don't know a lot of Czech.
But I'm much happier with romantic languages and knowing how to pronounce things. With Slavic languages, I'm kind of stuck, to be honest. I don't have enough knowledge to give it a good go. I'll accept your attempt, Scott. It seemed reasonable enough.
It seemed cromulent, yeah. So tomorrow I'll wake up and scald myself with tea as part of that glut of late 70s Czech time travel comedies.
With Nazis.
Yes, I'm sure you're as tired of hearing about them as I am as writing about them, so I'll keep this brief, as I can't imagine anyone listening to this isn't intimately familiar with it already. But on the off chance you've been living under a rock for the past 40 years, we're introduced to twins Jan and Carol, one a mild-mannered engineer who invented the process of time travel and used it to set up a chrono-tourist business, the other a brash, womanising drunk, and also pilot/astronaut of the spacecraft used to bend time to her will. His reckless lifestyle leads Carol into financial difficulty, making him an easy target for a group of Nazis who have hatched a plan to take an advanced weapon back to Hitler mid-World War II to change the course of history. Hitlery? Change the course of history.
Hillary. Evil Hillary or something, blah, blah, blah. No.
Emails.
Yes.
It's always the emails through.
Benghazi.
There's safeguards against such things, of course, but the pilot can't override them. Finding this less risky than a payday loan service, Carol agrees to sell his soul to the Nazis. Not long after, he chokes to death on a roll. While Jan's upset by his brother's death, he also sees an opportunity to make a change to a life that he's finding mundane and unfulfilling. He assumes Carol's identity and all of the hassle that comes along with it, with angry husbands being the least of it, and before long he's an unwitting Nazi accomplice trying to foil their plans while keeping himself alive. Now, being a comedy, there's a fair amount of bumbling ineptitude from everyone involved, leading to a nicely convoluted final act where there's something of a do-over with multiple day-apart versions of people flailing around, the exact details of which I think I'll leave to the interested. But it would be cynical to say that we chose to cover Tomorrow I'll Wake Up and Scald Myself with Tea purely on the strength of the title. Cynical, but entirely accurate.
It's entirely accurate, yes. We cannot tell a lie.
It being up there with Uncle Boon Me, who can recall his past lives as needlessly specific titles go. Apparently this is something of a cult classic in the UK following a terrestrial TV showing some decades back. Now, I had never heard of this film, presumably for the reason that, hipsterism aside, it's not all that remarkable a film. I mean, it's fine. That the high-level concept is good enough, and there's enough chuckles raised throughout that I don't think I'd wasted my time watching it, but is it worth, hypothetically speaking, registering on Czech language piracy message boards to hunt down a copy? Probably not. It does have quite a good soundtrack, though. In the admittedly astronomically unlikely event that you stumble upon an easily accessible copy of this, and you're in the mood for some light knockabout comedy, and I suppose also the disturbing increase in actual Nazis knocking around these days hasn't put them into the no laughing matter category for you, it is an enjoyable enough watch.
Yes, this is yet another thing to add to the canon of time-travelling Nazi shenanigans that is consumed a distressingly large part of my life, including...
not practically, I assume, just you're not actually out there time travelling with Nazis or
no,
against
mostly
them, or...
in the entertainment state, Scott, because whether or not it makes it, it's my preferred title for this episode, but there is a point-and-click adventure called Time Gentlemen Please, a sequel to Been There, Done That, which is both incredibly funny and also features time-travelling Nazi robot dinosaurs. So it's a nice companion piece to that, really, because it does also mention dinosaurs and as time-travelling Nazis. Oh, so it's all good. And also, if you like point-and-click adventures, check out Been There, Done That, and Been There, Dan That, sorry, and Time Gentlemen Please, because they're great and really funny. Nothing to do with anything, but I just like those things. Yeah, you're right, Scott. It's not anything special. It doesn't do anything that other time travel films haven't done. I'm sure other things have, in fact, had bumbling Nazis, which is... Do you know what? I'm not actually sure whether I feel the same. I know a few years ago I thought that sort of making them look silly was a good way to deal with them.
Mm.
I'm slightly less well convinced of that now, but it's certainly something you could have a conversation about. And remember, this was much closer to the time, so imagine that the Nazis had supporters in Czechoslovakia, what is now Czech Republic and Slovakia, and also they did bad things to that country too. So, and only 30 years after the end of World War II, maybe a bit more raw. Yeah. So it's a very different take on it, and you can understand why it would be different. That said, I suppose it's difficult to say anything of any particular substance about, but it is quite interesting. There's this strange thing though, I noticed in this one, I've noticed in several films before, that while this is a 1970s film, by date it's pushing the 1980s, but it feels more like it's actually from the 60s end. Yeah. Which I think it's like Eastern Europe, and this is Central Europe. It seems like Eastern and Central Europe kind of lagged behind Western cinema by about a decade in terms of the aesthetic, and possibly even just the film stock, because that plays such a large part in how a film looks. So it did feel like it was more like from the end of the 60s rather than the end of the 70s.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually. It did look an awful lot more like Je t'aime than something else that would have been around in that era kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly how I thought about it, Scott. Again, it's nothing to do with the film. It doesn't make the film any better or any worse. It's just an interesting sort of aesthetic thing. It was like, it does feel like, in so many ways, the look of it is lagging about, tracking about 10 years behind. Yeah. But that said, there are some, the special effects aren't good, but I can't imagine it had a particularly large budget. Yeah. But some of the interiors, like this house where the conspirators meet at the beginning, felt considerably more modern than I would have expected from 1970s communist Czechoslovakia. That's possibly just my ignorance about exactly how 1970s Czechoslovakia was, but it surprised me. Whereas the rest of it felt...
Well, I was thinking that was a sort of mid-70s Czech take on what the future is going to be, which felt like it was a sort of 1950s version of what the future would have been in an American film. Maybe, so it's still lagging behind in that regard. Yeah.
And the other thing is, again, my knowledge of 1970s Czech cinema may just be this film, actually, because I can't immediately bring anything to mind. My knowledge of 1970s Czech pop culture may just be this and that Czech rolled video that was very popular on YouTube maybe 7 or 8 years ago, with that guy that looks a bit like Willie Rushton doing his amazing shoulder shrug. And if you don't know what I mean, get onto YouTube right now and look up Czech rolled, because it's fantastic. But again, maybe this is just, I don't know if this is my foolishness, my ignorance, or it's just the way that have always been presented with the image of Soviet era Warsaw Pact countries. But you always get the impression that everything was miserable all of the time. Whereas this isn't. It's light-hearted, it's fun, the people in it are clearly having fun, it's full of jokes, and it's not the sort of grim, nasty idea you have of Soviet-type cinema.
It's certainly a very different view from Behind the Iron Curtain as to what we'd been presented with this side of it.
Yes, I don't know if it's like that this is in fact not representative, or that what we grew up with, it's like the way things were presented on news and documentaries and stuff was like, actually that wasn't representative.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't, because I think even when I was growing up, it sounded like the propaganda from our side of things would be that most Soviet film and that side of the political divide film would mainly be about queuing for bread, because that seemed the general impression of it.
I mean, I've seen plenty of really miserable Russian films, but but maybe that's just the ones that made it out and got popular. It's not not necessarily indicative of what was happening. But this, it's kind of a knockabout comedy. It's sort of a farce in some points, but you know what? I would recommend this just for being something different to watch. It's a time travel comedy from 1970s Czechoslovakia. How many of those have you seen?
Yes.
One.
How's that going?
Impress me. And the lead, Petr Koška, is really pretty engaging guy. He's got a good comic turn, good comic timing, and he plays two roles in this film, and he does it really quite well. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I thought was mostly impressive is they do a reasonably decent double in for a lot of the shots, and it's not really obvious.
Yeah,
when for a lot of that, that's actually quite well blocked and handled from production side. I mean, there's one pretty ropey split screen kind of mirroring effect later in the film, which is, well, at some point on it, which is bad. I think it was actually when there was two versions of him going around rather than him and his twin. Not that it makes any difference to the visuals of it, I suppose. That was a bit ropey, but the rest of it was actually pretty well executed. Okay, the spaceship travelling thing is a bit button moon, but other than that, it's fine. It services for what it needs to do, it's fun. It's let's say it's not groundbreaking or epoch defining or anything like that, but yeah, it's certainly something different. So on that basis, yeah, I have to recommend it. Yeah.